Just when we thought the Sandman Season 2, Volume 2 had given us all the answers. The post-credit scene dared to whisper a truth too big for the main story. A quiet, eerie house. The Fates. A poem. No dream. And yet, he's everywhere. Lurking in verse. Echoing in fate. It wasn't just a goodbye. It was a warning. A philosophy. A thread pulling us deeper into the infinite spiral of life, death, and what lives beyond even the endless. Dream may have died, but something far more powerful was born in his place. The final moments of the Sandman Season 2, Volume 2, were hauntingly poetic, but it's the post-credit scene that hit like a dagger wrapped in silk. Subtle, quiet, and devastating. The scene brings us back to the timeless house of the kindly ones, the triple aspect fates, maiden, mother, crone. We've seen them before, playing their eternal game, manipulating destiny with scissors and thread. But this time, there's no dream left to mock, no thread left to cut. Instead, they read a poem, a prophecy, a post-mortem elegy for a god who chose to feel. And that's where it begins. Not with action, not with conflict, but with words. The poem isn't just filler, it's layered. It holds every answer we've been too afraid to ask. It's not just about Dream's death, it's about the idea that death isn't the end, not for mortals, and certainly not for the endless. The Fates, emotionless and ancient, talk of death the way we talk about weather. Routine, predictable, boring even. But the death of Morpheus? That shook even them. Not because he died, but because he changed. And change, for beings that have existed since the dawn of creation, is far more terrifying than death. Morpheus was never supposed to evolve. He was Dream, the unshakable pillar of stories, rules, and order. But he did evolve. Slowly, reluctantly, and then, irreversibly. It began with Orpheus, his son, the one he abandoned, the one he condemned, the one he loved too late. The fact that Dream took the final step to end his son's suffering, yes, he committed filicide, but it wasn't out of rage. It was mercy. And in the eyes of the Fates, that one act alone made him something new, something unpredictable. The post-credit scene doesn't show us much. No grand battles, no declarations, but it says everything. The Fates barely mention Dream directly, yet everything they say is dripping with his presence. The way they speak of cycles, beginnings, middles, ends, it's clear they're talking about him, about how even endless can reach their end. But unlike the others, Dream didn't fade. He chose his end. He walked into it with open eyes. That kind of agency? That terrifies beings like the Fates. And then there's Daniel. Because here's the twist. Morpheus may be gone, but the dreaming didn't shatter. The throne didn't vanish. It changed hands. Daniel Hall rises, not just as a new dream, but as a different kind of ruler. One born of both mortal blood and divine inheritance. One shaped by compassion rather than control. Daniel's existence isn't just a continuation. It's a rebellion, a rejection of the old way, of Dream's mistakes, of endless rigidity. The Fates, reading their poem, almost sound bitter, as if they resent that Morpheus didn't go out the way they planned. No quiet fading, no predictable decay. Instead, he left a legacy, a dream that outlives even the king of dreams. That's what makes the post-credit scene so powerful. It's not an ending, it's a handoff, a warning, and perhaps a challenge. Because here's the deeper truth buried in their cryptic verse. Morpheus didn't just die, he transformed. And transformation, in the realm of the endless, is the most radical act of all. The silence left by Morpheus's death is loud. But in that silence rises something the Fates didn't expect. Daniel Hall, the child born from dreams and reality, now seated on a throne forged by grief, sacrifice, and rebirth. In Season 2, Volume 2, Daniel doesn't just appear as a replacement. He's a statement, a disruption, the embodiment of everything Dream refused to become until it was too late. Daniel is different. He's not shackled by tradition like Morpheus. He's not obsessed with rules, rituals, or rigid hierarchy. He doesn't hide behind masks of dignity and duty. He's human enough to feel everything and divine enough to control it. That balance? That's what unsettles the cosmos. The old Dream lived within a cage of his own making. The new Dream carries keys, and he's not afraid to unlock new doors. The post-credit poem, whispered through the cracked voices of the Fates, hints at this shift. A thread cut does not mean the loom ends, the crone says, only that the fabric must be rewoven. That's Daniel. The new fabric, the new narrative. One woven not from old myths, but from change. And it wasn't just Morpheus's death that birthed Daniel, it was the way he died. Because make no mistake, Morpheus's death wasn't tragic. It was intentional. He knew what the prophecy meant. He knew that holding on to the past, his guilt, his mistakes, his endlessness, was a slow execution. So he embraced the prophecy. He let the maiden cut his thread. He let go. And that final act of letting go didn't destroy the dreaming. It saved it. That's what Daniel represents. Redemption. For Orpheus, for Hippolyta Hall, for Dream himself. And if you listen closely to the words of the Fates, there's a bitterness underneath the poetry. A hint of frustration. Not because Morpheus is gone, but because he didn't play by the rules. The Fates were never gods. They were never creators. They were weavers, pattern keepers. They exist to ensure that what must happen does happen. But Morpheus changed the ending. He didn't just die. He passed the flame. And Daniel? He's burning in ways no one can control. In the Sandman, Season 2, Volume 2. There's something poetic in how Daniel was once just a child born into dreams, a mere subplot, a pawn in the game between mortals and the endless. But now, he is the game. The throne didn't change Daniel. Daniel changed the throne. And with that, the dreaming itself is reshaped. You can feel it in the final shot of Volume 2 before the post-credit scene rolls in. The realm is quieter, calmer, but there's something brewing under the surface. A new kind of magic. One not bound by ancient codes, but by emotional truth. This, more than anything, is what makes Dream's death feel so deserved. Not because he was weak, or wrong, or evil, but because he had reached the end of his thread. He had walked every path, faced every regret, and instead of clinging to power, he gave it up. Not out of defeat, but out of wisdom. That's a message few characters ever get to deliver, especially in a world where gods rarely change and endless rarely die. Dream's death wasn't punishment. It was evolution. And Daniel, he's not just a successor. He's proof that even destiny can be rewritten, if you're willing to bleed for it. The Fates can whisper their poems, they can roll their eyes and thread their needles, but the dreaming no longer belongs to them. It belongs to a boy who became a god, and a god who chose to be human. And that, right there, is the real twist of the Sandman Season 2, Volume 2. Morpheus didn't die because he had to. He died because he chose to. And that choice changed everything. As the post-credit scene unfolds, the Fates don't mourn. They don't celebrate. They observe. With cold, ageless eyes, they recite their cryptic poem, not as a eulogy for Dream, but as a reminder to the universe. This was never supposed to happen. Morpheus was not meant to change, not meant to love, not meant to bleed or to bend, and most certainly not meant to die by choice. The endless do not evolve. That was the law. And yet, here we are. Their words, vague and laced with venom, carry more weight than any sword. The son slays the father, one fate mutters. The thread cuts itself. There's no comfort in their tone. No hint of justice or balance. Only frustration. Fear. Because Dream's death wasn't a cosmic accident. It was an act of rebellion, not against the dreaming, not even against the other endless. It was rebellion against destiny itself. That's the secret buried under the surface of the post-credit sequence. It's not about wrapping up the story. It's about exposing the cracks in the rules that have governed the Sandman universe from the start. Rules that the fates, the endless, even death herself, were bound to obey. And now, Morpheus shattered them. Not with violence, but with a decision. He refused to let fate define him. He refused to be the cold, stoic figure of the past. He chose forgiveness over pride, mercy over law, change over permanence, and that choice is what enraged the fates the most. Because if Dream can die by his own will, what else is possible now? Their poem loops back on itself. What begins must end, but some ends are written in ash. It's a veiled threat, a whisper that warns Daniel, and perhaps the audience too, that not all cycles are clean, not all transitions are welcome. The old world won't let go so easily. Even if Dream died nobly, there are ripples, consequences, and those consequences are coming. In The Sandman, Season 2, Volume 2, there's also a deeper emotional undercurrent in their words. While the fates appear detached, their poetry betrays something else: envy. Envy that Dream could evolve while they are stuck in eternal repetition. Morpheus found meaning in love, in pain, in loss. He learned, changed, died with peace. But the fates? They are cursed to weave the same patterns again and again, watching, waiting, never changing. And maybe, just maybe, that's what they resent the most. Because Dream's death wasn't just a death, it was a message to the cosmos. You can change, even if you're ancient, even if you're endless, even if fate says otherwise. And that message? It's dangerous. It undermines the whole system. It plants doubt in the minds of gods. It gives hope to mortals. That's why the fates had to speak. That's why the poem was whispered at the end, not to honor Dream, but to contain the damage. To remind the world that even if this Dream was different, he still died. He's still gone. And the new Dream, Daniel Hall, better remember who really holds the thread. But here's the flaw in their logic. Daniel isn't afraid of the fates. He knows their game. He was once a child in their web. He watched his mother, Hippolyta, get twisted by their patterns. He watched his godfather Morpheus suffer under their design. And now that he wears the crown, he won't make the same mistakes. He won't be controlled by old prophecies or stale rituals. Daniel is the wild card, and that's why the fates fear him too. The post-credit scene leaves us with a lingering dread, not because Dream is gone, but because something new is rising, something uncontrollable. Daniel isn't just the next Dream, he's the first Dream of a new era. And if the fates can't manipulate him, what's left for them? That's the danger. That's the prophecy beneath the poem. And that's the storm we're heading into. Morpheus, the king of dreams, is dead. But unlike the ghosts that fade into myth, he left behind something permanent. A choice. Not a monument, not a throne, not even a memory. A choice. To feel. To forgive. To change. And in a universe ruled by beings who see emotion as weakness and fate as absolute, that's the most heretical act of all. The Sandman. Season 2, Volume 2. Doesn't end with a battle. It ends with a question. What happens when an endless chooses to be more than their title? The final threads of this volume weave tightly around that question. The post-credit poem, lyrical and cruel, isn't just a farewell to Morpheus. It's a warning to Daniel. It's the old gods trying to scare the new one. The throne remembers, the maiden mutters. It remembers who sat before. But Daniel doesn't flinch. He's not interested in memory. He's interested in possibility. And that's the exact shift we're witnessing. For 2 volumes, Morpheus ruled the dreaming like a grieving monarch, dignified, rigid, tormented by every mistake he ever made. His love was buried under guilt, his kindness masked by duty. Even when he changed, it was painful, slow, earned through loss, Orpheus, Nada, Lyta, death herself. But Daniel? He doesn't carry that burden. He doesn't rule from a place of sorrow. He rules from understanding, empathy, Connection. He doesn't suppress his humanity, he embraces it, and the realm responds. We see in the Sandman Season 2, Volume 2. It in subtle ways in Volume 2's final chapters. The dreaming begins to breathe again, less cold, less rigid, more organic. The boundaries blur between dream and reality, between myth and memory. Where Morpheus saw structure, Daniel sees fluidity. Where Morpheus saw duty, Daniel sees potential. That's not just a shift in tone, it's a shift in power. Because for all their control, the fates never ruled the dreaming. Dream did. And now, the realm has a new heart, a new center, and it beats. But here's what the fates truly fear, and it's why their cryptic poetry carries so much venom. It's not just that Dream changed, it's that his death was not the end. It was a spark, a match lit in a world soaked with old rules and dusty destinies. Because if Dream, the one who held the oldest stories, could write a new one for himself, what else is possible now? What about desire, despair, destiny himself? If Dream's path could be altered, then fate isn't fate at all. And for beings like the fates, who depend on permanence, on repetition, that's a catastrophe. They whisper warnings into their poem, subtle threats, veiled prophecies. The child dreams in colors not yet named. Beware the hues of mercy. That line alone says everything. Daniel's power isn't destruction. It's compassion. It's mercy. And in the universe of the Sandman, where control has always been tied to punishment, mercy is a revolution. Look at how Morpheus met his end. He wasn't killed by a villain, not consumed by rage. He died at peace. That's rare in this world. He let his son go. He set Lyta free, he gave up his own grip on legacy. And in return, he received something no Endless had dared to imagine. Freedom. The freedom to die on his own terms, to exit the story gracefully, to hand the pen to someone else. That's not weakness, that's power. And Daniel? He's holding that pen now. He's not just continuing the dreaming, he's rewriting its rules. Already we can feel the tension building beneath the surface. Season 2 ended with peace, but it's a fragile peace. A storm is coming, not one of swords or sorcery, but of ideologies. The old way versus the new. Daniel's compassion will be tested. The other Endless will notice. Desire has never been one to stay quiet. Despair feeds on imbalance. Destiny walks with pages already written, and he won't like new ones being scribbled in the margins. Even Delirium, wild and whimsical, may sense the danger of too much change, because the Endless exist to endure, not evolve. But Daniel? He is evolution. He is the dream Morpheus could never allow himself to be. And that makes him the most dangerous being of all. There's something quietly thrilling about how this season ends, not with fireworks, but with a whisper. A soft turning of a page. The dreaming didn't collapse. It transformed. And that transformation didn't come from conquest. It came from love, sacrifice, and letting go. The fates hoped to scare us, to remind us that everyone dies, even gods. But what they failed to understand is that Daniel's dream is not about fear. It's about hope. And hope, unlike prophecy, cannot be controlled. It leaks. It spreads. It infects even the most hardened of hearts. That's the true legacy of Morpheus. Not the throne, not the rules, but the crack he left in the foundation. A crack wide enough for light to shine through. So as the fates finish their poem and the credits finally roll, we don't leave with sorrow. We leave with something more unsettling. A sense that we've only just begun. The world of Sandman isn't closing, it's opening. To new dreams, new dangers, and a new god who dares to feel. Morpheus is gone. But Dream has never been more alive.